Welcome to the Mom and podcast. We're your hosts, Suzanne Kearns
and Missy Stevens. We want to help you through everything that happens in the ellipses, from your professional life to your emotional health.
You're a mom and so much more. Let's figure out what comes next together. Welcome to the Mom and podcast. I'm Suzanne Kearns, mom and writer, LGBTQ and sex ed advocate, and today summer vacation and college tour planner. Look at this thing. This is ridiculous.
Wow. I kind of think we have found your next career, but that's a safe bet.
Yes.
And I'm Missy Stevens. I'm a mom and writer, foster care advocate, and today Dr. Mom. I have one kid home missing his last day of school and one kid taking a final, and I don't know that he should be there taking a final.
That's a tough decision to make. And yeah, you can also be the doctor to Fran, our guest, who is also just recovering from COVID. Today, we are so thrilled to be joined by Fran Hauser, who is a mom and writer, speaker, and investor in over 30 female-founded companies. She's the best-selling author of the books behind me, The Myth of the Nice Girl, Achieving a Career You Love Without Becoming a Person You Hate, which has been translated into 6 languages and was named Best Business Book of the Year for 2018 by Audible. Fran's new book, Embrace the Work, Love Your Career, is quickly becoming the go-to for women seeking more joy and fulfillment in their career. Fran regularly speaks at conferences and organizations to help women build careers they love while staying true to themselves. Much of her current work is informed by the 15 years she spent in media, where she rose through the ranks of Time Inc. to president of digital. She lives just outside of New York City with her husband and 2 sons. Welcome. We are so glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We want to focus on this book behind me. I will never get used to this business, why I'm not a weather person. But we want to focus on the new book, but we also really want to talk a little bit about the myth of the nice girl. We are both Gretchen Rubin 4 tendencies obligers. We're Enneagram 9s. One of my biggest regrets from when I was working full-time is that I did not know how to be my normal, nice self and my assertive work self. I did not figure it out. And then I just recently listened to The Myth of the Nice Girl and was like, dang, I needed this so badly then, but it's going to be good for me now as well. So we'd like to talk for a little bit about where that came from in your life and how it can empower other much too nice girls.
Yeah. So that book really came from all of the mentoring that I had done, over the course of my career, where I just had so many conversations with different women where they would say to me, like, just how hard of a time they had reconciling the fact that I was nice and that I was also successful, because there's always been this myth that nice girls don't get the corner office. So I just spent so much time with women talking through, the power that I see in bringing qualities like kindness and compassion and empathy to work while also still being strong. That's the thing, right? You don't have to choose. You don't have to choose between being nice and being strong. And that's really, I think, a big theme of the myth of the nice girl, that the most effective leaders actually lead with both of those qualities.
Yeah. And I love the idea of how that helps build the trust as well, because back in my working days when I was working in advertising, I remember our president used to be really shocked because whenever they would give me a client that had, just kind of steady with their spending or whatever, he's like, you have the golden touch. Like, what do you do to like convince these people to spend more or to try out these new products or whatever? And like, it's the niceness or the trust. And they just knew I was looking out for them more than I was looking out for the company most of the times. And so they felt that if there was anything that I was ever going to recommend, that it really did make sense for them, that it wasn't just a sales pitch. So I do think there's so much to be said for the nice people out there.
I do. And I think business, like being successful in business at the end of the day, it's all about relationships, and relationships are based on trust. So, you were just saying, Suzanne, how when you're nice to people, they're more likely to trust you.
Yeah.
So it's just nice, builds trust, builds relationships, right? And it all kind of feeds together. One story that I love to share, back when I was at Time Inc. and I was running the digital business. So, we were launching all of the websites and apps for our magazines. My success and my team's success was very dependent on being able to get resources from our IT department, right? We needed
Mhm.
those developers
Yeah.
to actually do the HTML coding and the app development. And I had such a wonderful relationship with Mitch Clafe, who was our CIO, who ran that department. And I just remember like him saying to me one day that like the only time people reach out to him was to complain. Like something was annoying,
Oh,
the website was down, the computer's not working, this isn't working.
Yep.
And I made such an effort to reach out with gratitude.
Yes.
Whenever like someone on his team contributed in a really meaningful way to a project, like I would send him a note. I would send our CEO a note. And I think that really allowed, and I did it from a very genuine place. I wasn't doing it
Yes.
like
right.
to be manipulative, but
Yeah, it needs to have
very
that
genuine.
authenticity or else,
You were
yeah.
doing it because that's how you like to do business. That you,
Right.
yeah,
Like, and I just
yeah.
think that developing that relationship with him was so critical to my being successful because he was more likely to give me resources when I needed them, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I love
Absolutely. And
it.
it seems so simple, but
So
at
simple.
work, it doesn't go like that very often.
Yes. And your new book does have a section in there about embracing your two. So just between that and then also the previous book, know for any of you listeners who have ever been made fun of for being too nice, that it can actually be your superpower. So
For sure.
we do want to jump into the new book though, because so excited. Oh my gosh. I'm going to hold it up closer for everybody.
We were just
So
talking about how beautiful it is. We
it
love a
is.
pretty
Thank
workbook.
you.
Although, you know what? Since it is a pretty workbook, we're going to do the Brene Brown of it. She says when you get a book like this, often it's too pretty. Like people don't want to actually do the work. So, what she recommends you do is you go in and you put a big heart. And so now,
And now you've already written in it.
now it has been written
I
in. And
love that.
so, yes, so
I've
it,
never heard that before. I love that.
I typically do the work like parallel, like in a notebook.
In a notebook?
Yeah, next
Yeah.
to it. And then I always tell myself that's so I can pass the book along and it doesn't have my stuff in it.
True.
But then
That's
I always hoard the books for myself so I don't
because
pass it
they're
along. I'll
so
buy them their
pretty.
own copy and not share mine. So I'm not really
Yeah, it
doing
was
it for
it
that.
was so interesting, working on this book because it's a workbook. The user interface of it was really important, right? Whereas
Yeah.
The Myth of the Nice Girl is 60,000 words. It's your typical narrative
Right.
book, right? That
Right.
you just go through very linearly. And working on this book felt more like working on, digital products, that I've launched over the years where the user interface was so important. Like even the weight of the paper and like testing different
Yes.
pens to make sure that they don't bleed and
Yes.
transfer, and just like, do we have enough space to answer this question, and is there enough room like on the line, like, so
Hmm.
that part was really interesting, and it was very a very different experience for me, one that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And drew on past career.
Hmm.
But yeah, and
You,
drew on a past career.
yeah,
Like,
you
isn't that
pulled on, we
interesting?
like to talk about that too. Like everything we're doing and leads to something.
It does.
Everything,
No
everything.
experience is ever wasted. And so, yeah, I love, love, love the book. I also, another thing that we say whenever we are talking about workbooks, sometimes people are intimidated to really put what they're really thinking or feeling in a book because they're
Mhm.
like, what if one of my kids grabs it or my husband grabs it? And I forgot to bring it with me here, but I have like this, it's like a banker's bag. And we will put it in the show notes for anybody who's like, oh, I
Best
want to
idea.
write this, but I just feel kind of weird writing it all down. It's just this little banker's bag. You get it on Amazon, you zip it up, you can put a little lock, hide the key, and it's just, big enough for your documents or whatever. So we will link to that again. I know we've talked about it before, but so
I
those
love
are our
that.
two tips for doing workbooks. First, just put the heart in it. Now it is not perfection and you can write in it. And if you have concerns about really being true to yourself while you're writing it down, grab yourself one of these little lockable document bags and we will link to that in the show notes.
And remember where you put the key.
And remember where you put the key. You know what?
My
In
secret
fact,
places are sometimes really secret from
Really.
everybody.
yeah,
Yeah.
actually, now I remember where the bag is. I actually gave mine to my daughter. I just had to reorder another one because I just felt that she's almost a grown woman going off to college, and there's nothing in her world that is truly like private. I did ask her, don't put drugs in it, but I was like, if you ever want to write a journal, or if, maybe you have a piece of
Yes.
artwork that is private and you just don't want your brother snooping around or the dog eating it or who knows what. So I actually gave her mine. And so I had to order
That's
another
so
one.
fun.
So
It's
that's
kind of like a
nice.
portable safe.
It is. It is. And yeah, just don't lose the key.
Don't lose the key.
Yes. But so I know that the books are really directed to professional career women, but many of our listeners are stay at home moms who are either trying to relaunch back into the paid workforce or, maybe the workforce is years off, but they're just trying to get better prepared for an eventual relaunch or just, being more intentional about the way that they're spending their time at home. So, how would some of the advice from the books and the exercises apply to embracing, both paid work, but also volunteer work or even taking care of your kiddos' work?
Yeah. Well, look, I think no matter what it is that you're working on, you're always building skills, and I think a lot of those skills are very transferable. I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine who's a stay-at-home mom, and she just took on a part-time job where she's working like 10 hours a week.
Mm,
And she really is not happy with it. It's not a job that she sees herself doing long term, but she's worried about the gap on her resume. Like she just wants to be
Right.
able to like put something
yeah.
on the resume. And actually the advice that I gave her was that I think it's more important if you're a stay-at-home mom to be working on building out your network
Mm,
as opposed to doing a part-time job that doesn't make you happy or makes your life like really hard. And I explained to her like there's so many great women's networks in the area that I live in that I would love to invite her to be a part of so that she can meet interesting people. And when the time comes for her to go back to work, she now has people that can open doors for her. And there might be opportunities that she hears about just through these relationships.
yes.
So that's one of the things that I really deeply believe is so important. It's about the people. It's about the people in your life and making sure that you're making room to meet new people and
Oh,
to
I
be
like that.
open and to be curious. And to me, that's time better spent than doing a part-time job so that you
Mm.
don't have a gap in your resume, if that makes sense.
Oh,
That
makes
makes a lot of
so much
sense.
sense. This leads so nicely into the section of your book about building out your dream team, which
Mhm.
I mean
Yes.
is obviously important for the paid workforce. But we try to shout this from the rooftops all the time about the untapped networking power of the school pickup line and
Oh,
how
Right.
many amazing, accomplished women you are standing next to and men, but we're going to talk about the women here who, you don't even know what they did in their past life. And y'all are talking about who's bringing the forks to the next class party instead of talking about how you can help enrich each other and help, move each other to the next level in your careers or just have a intelligent conversation
I'm
instead of
so
just this small
guilty of just
talk.
having the school related small talk. It's like my brain doesn't even think like, hey, why don't we find out who this person is? It's
Hmm.
just more about what
right.
class is your kid in? What are you getting for the teacher gift? Whatever. Like it's
Isn't that fascinating how that
yeah.
happens? I mean, that happens to me too, where you just like get into this zone, where you're literally just talking about like all the logistics stuff
Hmm.
that's school related and the play dates and the this and the that. And it's so interesting, right? Because we all are multi hyphenates. We all, we all have different parts of our lives. We have experience, we have history. We might, even though like I might not have a full-time job, I might be working on a really interesting project that
Hmm.
might be of interest. So I think it's really important to like schedule those walks and those coffee dates
Yes.
with moms and really learn about each other on a deeper level on what your interests are and what kinds of things are you working on outside of parenting. I think it's just so important and we don't do it enough.
Yeah.
That's how opportunities come up.
So
Yes.
much. Some
Yes.
oh,
Because
I'm
that
so glad to hear a
organic growth is,
professional give a stamp of approval to our soapbox message, Missy.
yeah. Yeah.
No, I love
That
it.
was
I love it.
that kind of takes us to a question we had about, so you're meeting people and you're making a point to have this organic growth where you learn about what, opportunities and build your network. But we both tend to be yes people. Like something comes up, and in fact, we've had a guest before say, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something,
Mhm.
or just because something sounds amazing doesn't mean it's right for you. And so you talk in the book about making your to don't list.
Hmm.
And I love that phrase. So can you spend a little time talking about how to create that to don't list and why it matters?
Yeah. So this is something that I'm kind of obsessed with, this whole topic of, saying no and setting boundaries. And I actually did a little piece of research. I talked to 300 women about why we have such a hard time saying no.
Mm.
And what I learned was that it's really complicated. There are like 15 different reasons. They're all in the book and Embrace the Work, Love Your
Yeah.
Career. It's everything from people pleasing, which is something that I'm totally guilty of, to FOMO, to being addicted to being busy, to feeling vulnerable, especially when you come back to work after a maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many reasons we have a hard time saying no. And I always say the first step is to know, like, what's your why? Why is it hard for you to say no? Because then you can check in with yourself. So when you get that request in your inbox and you're about to say yes, you can literally ask yourself, like, am I saying yes for the right reason? Is this something that's aligned with my priorities? Or is this something maybe that's just going to bring me joy that I really just want to do? Or am I saying yes just because I feel bad saying no?
Mm.
And it's so these are the questions I have to ask myself because my knee-jerk reaction is to say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just like immediately, like I want to be helpful, I want to be that person who's like always there and generous with my time. But I literally have to step back and have this conversation with myself, like every single time before I say yes. And I can't tell you how many times it will lead to me saying no, which is great. So empowering, right? Because like you're taking
Yeah.
control of your time and your space. We have the control, we have the power to decide and choose where we're going to spend our time.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I always say too is saying no can be very like short and sweet. You don't have to spend 3 paragraphs explaining why you're not going to do something,
Oh,
right? It's like
I'm
you don't have
feeling
to do
attacked right
that.
now.
no, I
Now
was
you're
just
feeling
thinking
attacked.
of like leaving my last contract job and deciding not to renew my contract. I mean, I wrote a short, like a little novella about why I
Novella.
needed to move on.
You basically wrote a book.
Yes,
So you basically wrote a book and it's because like you feel bad and you want to make
I
sure,
did.
but literally like this is my thing now with saying no is it's usually in an email, especially it's a couple of lines. I always start by saying thank you, not I'm
Mhm.
sorry, because again, your knee jerk is I'm so sorry I can't make it. Thank you so much for thinking of me. Thank you for the invitation and then say, I'm heads down working on writing my book, building my business, working on this project, whatever it is. So I won't be able to participate. But, I wish you the best.
Yeah.
And that
I
can be
love that tip of like not starting with sorry. Start with thank you.
Yes.
start with thank you.
Sorry is the knee jerk. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't.
I'm so
I
sorry. I can't.
know.
I'm so sorry. I'm so, so sorry. I have actually in the first book, The Myth of the Nice Girl, I included a story about saying sorry and how a colleague of mine at work basically called me out on it and said, do you realize like you apologize all the time? You're apologizing for things that you don't need to be apologizing for.
Oh,
And I didn't believe her. I really didn't. I didn't realize I was doing it. And I went into my inbox and I typed the word sorry in the search field.
oh no.
Hundreds of emails came back,
Mhm.
hundreds. And when I was reading through the emails, I was horrified because the things that I was apologizing for, like they were so trivial. I should
Ah,
not have been apologizing. There was no reason to apologize. Like, so it was in that moment that I realized I actually downloaded a Chrome extension called Just Not Sorry that was built by a female engineer. It's been downloaded a 500,000 times, this
I'm
extension.
going
oh
to
my
download
God.
it after
Just
this.
Not
Yes.
Sorry. it basically alerts you anytime you type the word sorry into an email.
Oh my
So
God.
it can just sort of like be a check-in, like, do you really want to say sorry? And
Right. Are
I
you
I
really
use that.
apologizing?
You really want to? So I use that extension for like a good year, just like help me
Mm-hmm.
wean off of the I'm sorry,
Oh
because
my gosh.
it really puts you in a position of weakness
Yeah.
if
Yes.
you're that person that's saying I'm sorry all the time,
Yeah. And I
right?
think that's a distinction between being nice and being, because we feel like that's the nice thing to do, but that's not
Right.
Right.
nice. That's
No, you
nice.
know what
No.
the nice thing to do is just to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nice thing.
Be
Thank you for thinking about
straightforward.
me. Thanks for reaching out.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to hear from you. So because when you start with sorry, it just sets the tone for the whole entire email, and it's not a good tone,
Mm.
No.
right?
After that part of your book, I caught myself apologizing to my child for a discipline. So it was not like a heavy duty situation. It was just a thing where I was like, hey, this is not something that's supposed to be happening. You need to rethink this. But I said, I'm sorry, we have to have this conversation. And I was like, wait a minute. And I had just listened to that part of your book and I had to backtrack and say, no, I'm not actually sorry. Like, I'm not apologizing to you for doing my job.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is my
Right.
job.
This is
And
my job.
I know it's not fun. I don't like it. You don't like it, but that's where
Yeah.
we are. But I realized I do it all the time. Now it's in the back of my head. And
Yeah.
Mm.
any complicated, difficult conversation for me includes an apology half the time. And not that's not how
I
it's
know.
supposed to
And I
be.
think too, it's so important, because with the inbox, it's much easier to pause and to think about it before you respond.
Mm-hmm.
But even when you're having these conversations with people,
Yeah.
I think just like taking a breath before you respond
Yep.
is really important, because that is, again, it's the knee jerk. That's where you're going to go. That's where I was going all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. We do need to take more of those
the
pauses.
breath, the breath is so
Mm-hmm.
important,
Mm-hmm.
See,
So,
right?
I don't
oh, I'm
know
sorry,
where that
Missy.
comes from. I know we're awful today. I don't know. We're out of
We're
practice.
just so
I don't know.
excited.
Well, and it's been such a weird week that I think we're both just like, oh, we can talk about something that's not
Yes.
everything else. And I lost my train of thought. What was I
Oh,
going
I
to
broke
say?
you.
I'm sorry. I'm not. Well, I broke
This is
myself.
what
Look at that.
editing's
I'm
for.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No.
I'm
Okay.
sorry. No, I'm not sorry.
I'm not. I'm just a
Okay.
mess.
I actually do
We're all
have,
going to blame it on COVID.
I
Anything
know.
that we're just blaming it on COVID,
Of
right?
course.
Whether we've
Yes.
had it, our families had it,
We do
Right.
that
right?
and menopause. Menopause is usually our go-to
Menopause is
for
right. Hormones, COVID, it's all
For
brain
it's all a
sure.
fog,
mess.
all of it.
Yes.
Okay. So no, I do love the message of your new book and this idea of, and we've talked to several career coaches in the past too, or like, even if you don't feel great about your job right now, like really take that pause and take a look at what are some of the roles in your job that you do enjoy. What are the things that you don't? The things that on Sunday night you're going like, oh, I don't want to be doing that the next day. And so I do love this idea of being able to have those conversations with your manager, your boss, or whatever, and see like, is there another role in the company that makes more sense for me?
Yeah.
Going from sales to HR, I think was one of the examples in the
I
book.
love
Yeah.
that story.
But then and I think about this a lot because I did leave my job. I've been on a 15, 16-year maternity leave and I blame the job because it did. For a while it was pretty rough. But I don't think it was the job. I think it was probably 20% of the job
Mm,
that was really enough. I mean, it was bad enough that I was just like, I can't do this. And it was elements of travel. It was elements of
mm,
having to be, clients calling at like 8 o'clock at night, that and those are probably also things that I needed to work around setting those boundaries. So
mhm,
again, not necessarily the job, is just the way that it was presenting in my life and
Mhm.
certain elements of it.
mhm.
But there probably are jobs that just suck. So like what is the line between knowing if there's elements that you can take and evolve and move with, or
Yeah.
ones where just for your own health and safety you just need to
Yeah.
cut your losses and leave?
It's such a great question. I remember when I was at Time Inc. and I'd been there 8 years. I was in a president of digital. I was running digital. That was my role. And what I realized was that the bigger my job got, the less I liked it, because it
Mhm.
became so much more administrative. It was so much more about like the budget and creating the deck for the board of directors meetings and cost containment. And I got into this place in my head where I just became so negative about the job. Like I was really just focusing on the things that I didn't enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I took a step back and I actually did an exercise that I have in the book in Embrace the Work, Love Your Career. I decided to look at my calendar for the prior few months and just pick out like the meetings, the events, the experiences that put a smile on my face.
Mm.
And then really think through like, what was it about each experience that was so fulfilling? And what I realized was that I really loved meeting with startup founders. That was a part of my job that I really enjoyed. Like I met with the founders of Rent the Runway before they launched.
Oh,
I was meeting with the founders of Foursquare and Flipboard and like all these companies.
uh-huh.
And I loved hearing about their business models and, their products. And so I realized, wow, like this is part of my job that I really like. And I had a conversation with my manager about like, is there a way that I could do more of that and give up like some of the administrative stuff? And we came up with this idea to launch an innovation lab for the company
Mm.
that I would run. And I mean, it's exactly what I wanted to do. Like I would basically be looking at startups, thinking about how we could partner with them, how we could bring in some of that technology into the company. And I kind of looked at what I was working on and some of the administrative things I was able to delegate to people on my team. They were excited to take them on
Mhm.
because they were new responsibilities. They were stretch assignments for them. Whereas for me, like I was just so over it, like I was so over that part of my
I've
job.
had that stretch.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good example where I was able to take something that I really liked about my job and create a new opportunity, that was really valuable for the company and also something that I enjoy doing. And it got me to stay there for 2 more years, before I eventually left.
And it's good for the
Um,
company and good for you.
it's good for the
Yes.
company, it's good for you. And I think, look, if you do that calendar exercise and you find that there's really like nothing about your job that you're enjoying, I think that's like a really good
It's an
time
eye opener.
to think about like, okay, this is not working.
Yeah.
So either like, is there something else within the company? And I think you can have an open, honest conversation with your manager. I don't think we talk to our managers enough. I
I
think we're so afraid,
yes.
we're so afraid to have the conversation. It's like,
I agree.
work takes up most of your week, hours that you're awake, you're working.
Mhm.
So if you're not happy, like do something about it, and it's
Oh,
like, so there might be another opportunity within the company. If there isn't, then I think that's a good time to start looking for something else, you know?
I am having such a major light bulb moment right now because I am
I can
realizing
see you having it. I was
no,
watching your brain go.
and I actually had this conversation with my boss, and this was even before I was pregnant or whatever, because I was a senior account director. I was doing a lot of stuff with clients, and the only position up from there was vice president. And I did not want to do that because then you were managing this team, you didn't have the client interactions, and you kind of weren't as much in the day to day with that relationship building. And so I just like, can I just be in this role forever? And it just was they were trying to get me to do an MBA program and do all this stuff. And there was kind of this shame associated with just like really enjoying what I was doing and feeling
Mhm.
like I had to move to this managerial or this, VP position. And and that could have just been a conversation that I had. And I guess we did kind of have that conversation because I was like, I just want to do this. But I think it was
Right.
seen as a lack of motivation instead of
Mhm.
just knowing what parts of the job that I was interested
Right.
in.
And knowing
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, and I didn't
I
wanna
think it was-
just be hanging out with the clients when there was a big problem or when I was trying to
Right.
sell them on something.
Yes. Well, and then I think that goes back to like how you frame the conversation,
Mhm.
right? In
Mhm.
terms of that conversation with your manager. Like, so focusing more on, look, I love this part of my job, and I feel like I can really create so much value for the company if this is where I focus,
Yeah.
versus having it be perceived as a lack of drive or
Mhm.
Mhm.
ambition,
Yeah.
So it's really more about like what's best for you and for the company. And look, I think too, like, having that self-awareness is such a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Like being able to
Huge.
say like, wow, I really love, for some people, they don't want to manage a team. They're really happy being an individual contributor.
Yeah.
So what a wonderful thing that that, like it's so lean into that. There
Yes.
isn't this like one magic bullet,
Yes.
linear career path for everyone, right? So
Yeah.
it goes. Patty Sellers, who was this amazing woman that I worked with at Timing. She ran Fortune's Most Powerful Women, that franchise for
Mm-hmm.
Fortune magazine. So, she spent her days meeting with, I mean, the most
Amazing
important
people.
female leaders in the world, like all the time. But she would always say, like, a career is more like a jungle gym than it is a ladder.
Oh,
And because it's more
I
of
love that
like
image.
you might need to take like a lateral
Hmm.
move, or like I know people, this amazing person, Jack Rotherham, that I worked with when I was at Time. He was the publisher of Teen People magazine. Like he had made it in terms of magazine publishing. Like he was, that's being a publisher
That's
is
it. Yeah.
the biggest job you can have on the
Hmm.
business side. There's the editorial side, right? Editor
mm-hmm.
in chief. And there's the business side, publisher. He made publisher, but this was like when the internet was really getting going. And he realized, all I know is print. I really need to learn digital.
Mm-hmm.
He took a huge step back. He went into a sales role at AOL to learn how to sell digital advertising.
Wow.
Um, and Suzanne, this is something I know you can really relate to given your ad agency background.
Yeah.
But, so yes, it was a step back, but oh my gosh, like, let me tell you, then he ended up moving so quickly and accelerating. And now he had digital experience and print experience, and he's had some wonderful roles over the course of his career.
I
Oh,
bet.
So this
Yeah.
this jungle gym concept, I think, is a really important one. Sometimes you take a step back, sometimes it's lateral, sometimes you go up, sometimes you go sideways, it's sometimes it's diagonal. Like,
yeah.
and it's whatever works for you. It's whatever works for you.
Oh, I
And I
love
love
that
this
picture of
concept
it.
of coming at it from a positive angle. You're coming at it from what do I want to learn more about or need to learn more about? And what is it I really like? What lights me up? Instead of thinking something's not working. What do I hate about this? Because I
Mhm.
think that's sort of our gut. Maybe I'm just
Yep.
speaking for myself, but our gut reaction when something's not working, we really focus on the parts that don't feel good
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
instead of flipping that. Because I had a similar moment to Suzanne when I was going through the workbook. I thought, oh gosh, my last job before my last full time corporate job, I thought it was the job. And in hindsight, there were so many things about that job I loved. So
Mm.
many. It wasn't just the job, there were other things going on, but I didn't look at it from that angle. I just remember thinking, this is not working for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And and sometimes, like for me, one of the reasons why I did eventually leave Time, after being there for 10 years, is my kids were really young. They were 3 years old and 18 months. We had adopted both of them. We adopted both of them at birth. We had a really hard time creating a family, my husband and I. We went through a lot. We went through in vitro. It was such a journey. And I just remember thinking, like, I woke up one day and I was like, I worked so hard to have this family, and
Mm,
I'm barely seeing these kids because I'm in this C-suite, role. At that time, there was no like
mm,
flexibility option. I remember asking if I could work from home one day a week. And it was a hard and fast no because
yep.
of
they
the
thought you were
precedent
crazy.
that it would set, right? For the
Yeah.
rest, because I was one of the senior female leaders. What kind of precedent would we be
Hmm.
setting for the company?
Yeah.
So, for me, I also at that moment had to think about like, okay, I've been here 10 years. I'm really not enjoying the job as much as I used to. And now I have these kids that I want to make
Yes.
sure that I'm spending time with.
Mm-hmm.
So like in that moment, it was really about, okay, how do I set up a professional life for myself
Hmm.
where I'm still energized and lit up and really enjoying my work, but I also have the time to really be present for the kids. And
Yeah.
I was very fortunate in that, but also I was very intentional about this. Over those last few years at Time Inc., I had created such a strong external network where I had, so many founders that I had met, so many venture capitalists, other people in technology. So I had built this network that really allowed me to seamlessly pivot into startup investing, and really working for myself. And that's what I've been doing now for 8 years. But I think the insight there is building, it goes back to the network, what we
Yeah.
started talking about in the beginning. Even then, for me, I was in that corporate role, but I was thinking about, okay, but I can't just, my whole network can't be media people, because then
Yes.
how am I going to grow? Like, I can't, so I intentionally said, I'm really interested in the technology sector, the startup space, and nonprofits. And I was very purposeful about meeting people in those different sectors. There was a book that I read, Half the Sky by Nick Kristof and Cheryl Wudunn, beautiful book.
Okay.
But at the very end of the book, they refer to a nonprofit organization called Global Giving. And I became really interested in what they had to say about global giving, to the point where like I stalked the CEO and founder of Global Giving, Mari Kurishi. I found her email address somewhere online and I emailed her. And this goes back to the curiosity and being open to learning, right? And meeting new people. I just emailed her and I said, hi, I'm Fran. I work at People, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to learn more about what you do. I'd love to see if I could be helpful in some way. We ended up meeting in person. I got to know the organization. I was helpful. I ended up joining their board. I was on their board of directors for 10 years.
Mm.
So I think that's just like such a good example of like, if something piques your curiosity,
Yes.
if something is interesting, like lean into that and reach out to people, meet people. Like if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have been able to pivot into this next phase of my career.
Yeah.
Whether it's the startup investing or the nonprofit work that I do. And so I really encourage people to do that versus just being heads down, like getting your job done. Yes, it's important to do great work, but while you're doing the great work, you need to be laying the foundation for the rest of your career.
Oh, that is such
I
a
think
perfect way to wrap things up. This
I was just
reminder
thinking
that
that
it
is
all
perfect
comes
sound bites.
back to this network. And that is something you can do today, whether you are in a career or whether you are 10 years away from doing your career. I mean, especially stay-at-home moms who are a lot of our audience. You're
Stay
going to be going to
curious.
the end of school parties. You're going to be doing a bunch of stuff this summer, your wine nights, your barbecues. You know, take that step to not just have the small talk conversations. Get curious and just follow that rabbit hole wherever it may lead. If someone's talking about something they're working on and it sounds really interesting, follow that for a little bit. Ask, take the next step in the initiative to maybe invite them to a follow-up coffee or whatever. Yeah, that's just
I'm
something that
inspired.
no matter where you are in life. I keep on telling my daughter this too, and it's driving her
Mm.
crazy. She doesn't believe me because she's going off to college.
She's
There's
not
all
the
these
right age to
no,
believe
there's
me.
all these artists who live in Austin. I'm like, they have gone to the colleges that you're looking at. They're in the field you're looking at. I was like, just write them and say, hey, can I be your coffee go getter this summer? She's like, no, I'd bother them so much. I'm like, this is their career. They want
All
to
right.
talk
Can
about
I
it. They
share one
want to
quick?
help
I have to
you.
share just this. Yes, one quick story I'm going to share, and you can share this with your daughter. Is I did a talk for the University of Cincinnati about a year ago. It was virtual for their women in sales class.
Uh-huh.
And this one young woman, Kelly, reached out to me afterwards. She emailed me to say how much she enjoyed the presentation. She had a few follow-up questions for me, but she also knows how busy I am. So she took it upon herself to put together a Google Doc with ideas for how to market my new book to college students. And it
Oh,
was such an easy yes to do a phone call with her because she was so smart. Like I was going to answer her questions, but now I had a million things that I wanted to talk to her about
Yes.
with the Google Doc that she sent over. So one thing you might want to say to your daughter is like, is there a way that she can offer to be helpful? So
yeah.
when she's reaching out to these people, is there like, if she's really good at social media, maybe she has some ideas for the artist on how they can build out their social media presence,
Mm-hmm.
or because people, when I get those kinds, and they're few and far between, most of the emails I get are, can I pick your brain? Do you have
Ugh,
30 minutes?
yes.
Right? But when I get those emails where I see that somebody is really looking to contribute and to be helpful to me, I'm going to take those calls.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
love that.
It's
Okay, you
great.
hear that,
She ended up
Zoe?
becoming my intern, by the way. Kelly ended up
She
becoming my
did.
intern. She ended up becoming my intern. Yep.
That's
I didn't even
amazing.
have an internship. I just created an internship role because it was like, I'm like, you're amazing. Like, I want, like, she came up with a Google. I'm like, now I want you to execute on this. You have all these great
Yes.
ideas. Now you're going to
Now do
execute.
them.
Now
Mhm.
do them. And she did a great job.
That's
Oh,
amazing. And you know
yeah,
what?
that
We
is
had
so
our
inspiring.
Alicia Fernandez on, the 40-year-old intern. And so, same thing. You don't have to be a 17-year-old to be an internship or to add value or help someone. So, yeah. Oh, I love this. I'm so inspired. Who can I go stalk and become their intern? I'm very excited.
I know my brain is.
Oh my goodness. So now, in addition to their books, what is the best way for listeners to learn more about you, follow you, reach out to you if they
Yeah, so
want?
my website is franhauser.com. So FRANHAUSER.com. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Fran_Hauser. And I also spend a lot of time on LinkedIn because of all of the career content.
Yes.
So
I'm trying to
yes,
go there more.
trying to go there more.
I
Yeah.
know. There's, I
Yeah.
It's
mean,
not part of my like daily
I get it.
check-in place, and then I'll go and there's all this great stuff and
Uh,
all these connections have popped up, and
it is
I'm
a
like,
you,
fun
where do I
rabbit
go?
hole, though. I mean, so
Yeah.
many ideas for guests come up because they'll just be like, hey, maybe you know this person because,
yes.
we've past guests that
Mhm.
we've had. Or even I just found my daughter an art coach for the summer because we had a mutual friend and they must have saw that I was searching all these art schools
Yes.
on LinkedIn. And they're
Yeah.
like, maybe you would like to know about this man who does exactly what your daughter's interested in and, and is in driving
Amazing.
distance. So, yeah, so LinkedIn, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, especially for anything around, obviously, the career area. All right. I think it's time for our look, listen, learns.
It is.
So, for anybody who is visiting for the first time, welcome. We're so glad you're here. And the look, listen, learn segment is where we each share a little something that we've been watching, reading, listening to, or learning about that you might be able to add to your to do list or incorporate into your lives. But we never want to put our guest in the hot seat. So, let's go ahead. Missy, you want to kick things off?
Sure. I have a few because I've had a little bit of downtime. I had a minor surgery 2 weeks ago, but even a minor surgery means you end up with a lot of downtime. So that's my learn is I have had to learn a lot about advocating for myself after this. Just in my healthcare, the healthcare system is overwhelmed. They're exhausted. They're shorthanded. Not everything went the way it was supposed to go. And so I had to speak up. I had to reach out and say, this is not working for me. And it was awkward phone calls. And in fact, I have to return a phone call. Everyone has been very kind. And I got a sweet return phone call yesterday saying, we really want to talk to you about this. And it's not about me anymore. It's about future patients not having to go through the same thing.
Mm.
Um, and so that's hard for me. I want to just complain to my husband and say, can you believe that they forgot to fulfill this prescription for the third day in a row? But I needed to speak up so that doesn't happen to the next person. So I've learned a lot and have also learned about a lot about being kind to myself in recovery because I told myself this was going to be easy. And in many ways it was, but I told myself I was going to bounce back and be back at full speed like 4 days later. And I was not. I was not for that
No.
first week. If I so much as ran an errand or did a small chore around the house, I was exhausted afterwards.
Yeah.
And and I can't lift things. I still am not cleared to lift things or do a lot of strenuous activity. So it's eye-opening to be like, oh, everything I did in my life required lifting something heavy or
Yeah.
bending over or even pushing the vacuum for the first week was too much. And so it's been a good learning experience and things I thought I knew about myself, I did not. So I think probably need to write about it in some way to get it all out of my head. So, but I've been learning a lot in the last couple of weeks. But while I was lying down, I also did a lot of TV and reading. And so I finished Better Things on it's on FX, but I think you can catch it on Hulu now is really where everyone would catch it. And
Oh,
it's
I'm not
five
familiar with
short
that.
seasons. It's comedian and writer Pamela Adlon, and it's she in this show, she is like a child actor and now has three daughters and is a single mom. And it's this simple story every time, but it's not every episode, it's kind of just there. I don't know how to explain it best. It's not a complicated plot line, but through the 5 seasons, there are through lines in the plot. and they wrap it up really sweetly. And it's just interesting to watch her learn about her daughters, and parenting is so different these days. And she's trying to handle all of these challenges of parenting three very different children in very different phases. And she also has her mother nearby. So she's that sandwich generation. And
our
it's
favorite.
funny and it's warm and it's weird and it's just great. So
I'm gonna check that out.
I highly recommend Better Things. It's bingeable for sure. And then I read Watching You by Lisa Jewell. And
I love her.
Okay, she has like 19 books, something like that. I don't know how I did not know Lisa Jewell, because it's right in my wheelhouse of what I love to read.
Are you like fast-paced thriller kind of book? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And she's perfect. So Watching You was a ton of fun. And now I have her entire catalog for the summer that I am going to breeze through.
Oh, I love that.
It's great. She's a British writer that does.
So Missy, I just read Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell.
Okay.
And She Was Gone. It's kind of like a Lovely Bones.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember that book, but
I do. I love that book.
It's disturbing, but it's fast-paced thriller. I love those kinds of books too.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great escape. And so she's such a good writer. I love her. I don't know how I did not read Lisa Jewell before. So go find all of her.
You discovered her. That's how I am.
I'm like, oh, I just her after she's been writing for a decade.
Yeah, right.
So that's me. What about you, Fran?
Okay, so I am a voracious reader. I think I read like 70 books last year.
Wow.
I actually have a bookstagram. It's called Fran's Bookshelf. So I love reading and then writing about what I've read. So one of the books that I just recently listened to, I love listening to memoirs that are narrated by the author.
Yes.
So, Demi Moore's memoir was really so special to listen to because her voice, you guys know her voice.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Amazing.
Amazing. And I had no idea the trauma that she went through as a child. I mean, she went through like life-threatening illness. She was raped as a teenager. I mean, she had, her parents were basically just not around. So she had this really incredible, like interesting upbringing. And it just kind of goes through the whole like Bruce Willis and Ashton Kutcher. And, she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood, and how she took so much crap for the fact that like she was being paid $12 million to do striptease, when Bruce Willis, her husband, was being paid like 20 million to do his action films, but everybody was giving her such a hard time. And so there's like this women's empowerment part to it. I really enjoyed listening to that one. So I would highly recommend it.
Oh yeah.
Audible credit. I'm going to get that.
Yes. You use your Audible credit. I really liked it. In terms of look, so I have a really hard time finding things that we can watch as a family. It's so hard. And I just feel like the older, my kids are 10 and 11 now, but it's just like the older they get, the harder it is.
Yeah.
But we've been watching The Masked Singer. Did you guys ever watch The Masked Singer?
I know about it, but I've never watched it.
Yeah, I've never actually watched it.
You guys, I mean, it's like we just started with season 1. I mean, there's, I don't know, 7 or 8 seasons now. It's hysterical. I mean, because it's celebrities that are basically up there, they're masked and they're singing, and there's a celebrity panel that's trying to like, they're given clues and they're trying to figure out like who it is behind the mask. And it's just like a really like silly, light, fun, very snackable, just as a family. Isn't that funny? I know. So that's my look. And then my learn is, I've been doing startup investing for the last 8 years, and I basically just taught myself how to do it. And it just sort of struck me that like, gosh, it would be kind of interesting to actually like take a course on angel investing. And I found this great course on this new website called classrebel.com. They have really interesting courses on fundraising, on angel investing, on crypto, if you want to understand like cryptocurrency.
Oh boy, yeah.
On how to build a big audience. You guys might like how to build, like if you're in content, like how to build a big audience. But I took this angel investing course, and what's great is you can attend live if you want, but if you would rather just go back in and just look at the recorded sessions, you could just do it on your own time. And it was amazing how much I learned. Like I thought I knew it all.
Yeah.
But I really was able to learn more about like the why, like why things, the structure is set up the way that it is, and why the contracts, the convertible notes, the safe agreements, like why the terms are the way that they are, right? Because when you teach yourself, you don't necessarily get into the backstory and why things are set up the way that they are.
Yeah.
So I think it was just such a great moment for me to realize, like, even though you think you might know like so much about a topic, there's always more that you can learn.
Oh, I love it. And
love
you said,
that.
okay,
Okay, I'm gonna
Class
check that out.
Rebel, like
Class
Okay.
Rebel. It's a really great site.
I got that written down. And yeah, talk about a way to follow your curiosity and kind of a low commitment way to explore a
Yes.
different area. If maybe you're
Mhm.
just like, oh, I love that. Okay, I got a lot to do now from you too.
I know.
Yeah, well, we're getting close to the end. Are you okay on time to go a couple minutes?
I think I have a noon, but I have 2 more minutes.
You have 2 more minutes. Okay,
I
I
have two
will.
minutes, guys.
Talk fast, Suzanne.
Okay, I'll be real fast.
Sorry.
So, no, I am trying to listen to The Silent Patient, which I'm using the world's most bargain basement audio app, which my library has, but it abruptly stops at the end of every chapter, which is not good when you're driving on the freeway. And it also
No.
doesn't remember where you left off. But the the book itself is very good. It's just going to take me like 3 times as long as usual to listen to it.
Yeah, you could probably
And
read
I
it faster.
also just finished It Ends With Us. So Missy, basically, I'm
Oh,
just, oh, so good.
can I just tell you, those are two of my favorite books of all time. The
Oh,
Silent
good.
Patient is my favorite thriller, hands down, like up there with Gone Girl. There's a twist in The Silent Patient that you're just going to lose your
I
mind.
did not see it
And
coming.
then, right?
Don't you
So-
tell me.
and It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
so
So
good.
good.
So good. Let's
Oh,
see. Oh, and then real fast. And then I am currently looking at Blueprint for a nonfiction book by our dear Jenny Nash, who we just love from
Awesome.
Author Accelerator. So loving
oh,
that. And I
great.
also just want to do this is I've already learned, but I'm learning it for the rest of you. This is like the best calendar in the world. You can choose these blocks of time and put it all together, and it's really great for planning. And it is from worksheetworks.com. And you just go plug in your date range and it makes it all one nice thing so you don't have like millions of
Wow.
pages. So yeah,
I love that.
worksheetworks.com has been my savior for like the past 3 summers of being able to put the whole summer in one viewable sheet. So
Love
Mm.
it.
that is my learn to share with you
Yay.
all. And we don't want to make you late for your next one.
Yes.
So
Thank you for being here.
thank you so much. Love this conversation. Love meeting you and love your books. Thank you so much.
Ditto. Thank you. And thank you so much for everything you guys are doing.
Oh,
Suzanne and
yes.
Missy, you're awesome. Thank you for having me.
All right. You have a
Great
great day.
afternoon.
Bye. Take care.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for the Mom and ... podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's show, and if you know someone else who could benefit from the episode, please be sure and share it with them. And while we're begging, please subscribe and rate us wherever it is you listen to podcasts. You can find links to all the things we discussed today in our show notes or over at our website, momandpodcast.com, with the A-N-D spelled out. In between shows, find us over at the socials, including our private Mom and Community Facebook group. The links to that group and all of our socials can be found at momandpodcast.com. Thank you so much for your support. We appreciate you more than you know. Now go out there and make your ellipses count.